if you're here, then what you can do is follow the channel, subscribe to the channel, because hey, if Canada is on your mind to live, work, study, or immigrate, then this is the place to be. Starting with the PNP draws, Ontario conducted a draw on the 14th of December. They invited 2,359 candidates through the Express Entry Human Capital Priority Stream, Tech Draw Specific. I'm glad that they conducted the draw after IRCC conducted the STEM category draw. And the reason for that is Ontario has been, so this is what people need to understand historically. That's right. History is very important. If you know the history, you probably at some point of time can even predict the future. So history, as far as Ontario is concerned, human capital priorities draw for a few years now. I remember I was also, not me, I was not the primary applicant, my wife was. So yeah, I know she was invited for Ontario's Human Capital Priorities draw, but we didn't take the invitation because we thought, hey, the scores are running so low, and we will definitely get invited. And that was a big blunder because then the scores didn't drop, the scores went up. And we let go of that opportunity. At that point of time, Ontario used to invite anybody over the score of 400. Over the period of time, they realized that a lot of invitations were going waste because IRCC was conducting draws and they were inviting people over score of 400. People were getting invitations and then their notifications were going down the drain because people had 45 days to submit the applications. That's why they would wait. Even recently, even now, over the last few years, when they have changed the format of how they invite people, because now they invite people under specific categories only. Tech draw, healthcare, skilled trade, French speakers with certain categories again. So they have identified certain segments, certain market priorities, and only those are the people that they invite. Even then, they realize that when IRCC conducts the draw, a lot of people obviously don't take their notifications of interest because the scores have dropped or the scores come down. So the trick that they identified was that if they were to conduct a draw with a high point, so when I'm saying high point means Ontario, obviously they cannot invite everybody. So they have a CRS score range and they establish the range with the number of invitations they want to do. A lot of people get confused as to how do they decide this upper limit, lower limit. They have a limit. They obviously do not have limitless invitations to issue. So they have a limit because they are bound by the quota, just like IRCC is bound by a quota. Quota for this year for Ontario is 16,500 people who will come through the nominations. IRCC's quotas, as we already know, was about 82,880. Ontario's 16,500 invitations are spread across different categories. So human capital priority stream, then the expressions of interest. In expressions of interest, you have the employer job offer stream, the international student stream, you have the master's PhD stream, then they have the entrepreneur stream. Combination of all of these streams is the total quota for Ontario. And therefore, then they have segment-wise, this is what they want to give to human capital priorities, etc., etc. So people who do not know PNPs very well, there are only 4 PNP streams or provinces that actually invite people or encourage people to apply even if they have no connection to Canada. So Ontario is one, of course, they have the human capital priority stream. Second one is Saskatchewan, they have the OID and the Express Entry stream. Third one is Alberta. Fourth one is Nova Scotia. We haven't heard from Nova Scotia in a very long time. So while they have the stream, yeah, we can let that pass. Alberta has more or less become more restrictive. They have become restrictive in the sense now they give priority to people who have family connections in Alberta. They give priority to people who have job in Alberta or who have studied in Alberta, worked in Alberta or all that. So Alberta pretty much has stopped inviting people who otherwise have no connection to Alberta or Canada for that matter. That basically leaves you with 2, Saskatchewan and Ontario. Now, Saskatchewan is a hot favorite amongst people whose CRS scores are low, who cannot get to CLB 9, who cannot get that 8777. So Saskatchewan is a hot favorite over there. Saskatchewan is also a hot favorite with people who are otherwise ineligible in Express Entry because they have a stream called OID, Occupation in Demand Streams, whereas all you need to do is score 60 points, you become eligible, then the higher your score, the better it is. So Saskatchewan hasn't been consistent with their draws. Earlier, usually you would see 1 to 2 draws every month. Now you haven't heard from Saskatchewan in quite some time. The word on the street about Saskatchewan is that they have been focusing on some other priorities. And that is by and large what is happening in Saskatchewan. And I know I'm deviating from the slide, but bear with me. In Saskatchewan, what is happening is that more and more people inside Saskatchewan are now applying for job approval letter. job approval letter is applied for by the employer, which they can then give it to their employees, using which they are able to apply for nomination. And even if the scores are low, negligent scores, they would still be able to apply for nomination. Once they get the nomination, they can get the work permit. They get the work permit, they can also apply for PR. That's Saskatchewan for you. So job approval letter in Saskatchewan is worth its weight in gold. As good as you almost getting the PR. Saskatchewan has had to then redistribute its quotas because more quotas are now being taken away by the job approval letter streams or the people who are inside Saskatchewan stream, and therefore less and less is what we are seeing from them on the OID and express entry stream. Ontario's human capital priority stream is brilliant. Therefore, people who are outside Canada, who do not have a job offer, who do not have any connection, and you don't need any connection at all. I know there is a letter where it asks you for the intention to reside in Ontario. You can write a 200-word essay and say, I love this particular city in Ontario and this is what I want to do, but that's what you need. Other than that, there is no specific requirement to have any kind of connection to Ontario in order to be eligible into the human capital priority stream. Not only that, even if you are inside Canada, you're inside Ontario, you were struggling as to what should I do? How will I get my PNP? What are the things that I need to prepare? If you are in as an international student, you have just got your postgraduate work permit. You have only 1 year, 1.5 years left in front of you. What should I do? Ontario's skilled trade stream is again another brilliant stream. You just need to have 1 year of work experience in Ontario in a skilled trade stream. Scores as low as 250 CRS have been successful throughout the year of 2023. So coming back to the latest draw, 2,359 candidates were invited, and that's why I love Ontario's this stream, because so many people, whether it is healthcare also the scores have gone right below 400 with Ontario. If Ontario was to conduct a healthcare draw today, right, because the last express entry draw in healthcare which we saw was at 431, because it was at 431, you will see the Ontario's score go way below 431. They will start at 430 as a high cutoff, and then they will go below. So as I was explaining to you, the reason why Ontario chooses, because they know that IRCC also issues invitations, they don't want the notifications to go waste. So they take the last related express entry draw, in this case, STEM category draw, and they take that as their high cutoff point. So 481 was the last express entry draw. They choose 480. Now, I know there are a lot of you out there who did not receive an invitation from IRCC on 481 because IRCC gobbled up. Accepting it, there was this huge error that they have not announced on their tiebreaker. The tiebreaker is actually somewhere in the month of May, April, May, in my opinion. But they have made a mistake. The month is issued as November, and therefore, a lot of you who are expecting ideas did not get it. So they also did not receive from Ontario. Why? Because Ontario put the high cutoff 1 point less, which is at 480, and 480 below. Then they decide, okay, how many invitations do I need to issue? So let's say I'm deciding 2,000 invitations. How many people are there in the express entry pool with their primary knock code, which is of interest to me being Ontario? I mean, just sort of giving you that as an example. So when Ontario identifies that these many number of people are there, and these are the number of invitations I want to issue, whatever is the last person's score after the number of invitations I want to issue, that becomes your low point. So 473 low point, high point 480. Now, what also Ontario did, which actually was something which people were holding against Ontario, was that they expanded their tech draw knock code priority list. So usually Ontario has 10 knock codes that they invite. They invite basically software developers, web developers, software engineers, the computer system managers. That's pretty much it, right? 10 knock codes in these 3 or 4 fields by and large. They always ignored information system specialists, the business systems, usually the 2171 knock codes, those were always ignored. The user support technicians were always ignored. Cybersecurity was always ignored. So these knock codes always had a grievance against Ontario. But hey, what did Ontario do this time? They included 5 additional knock codes, which are also related to IT in this particular draw. Total of 15 knock codes for the first time, in a very long time, Ontario invited. 2171s have never been invited by Ontario. First time they were invited. Now, the combination of these two things, right? 15 knock codes being invited, and also the fact that the high point was at 480. Now, when 15 knock codes are invited, means 5 new knock codes. There obviously are going to be a lot of people in the pool with these 5 knock codes, right? 2171s were plenty of them. And therefore, the low range did not really drop a lot, because 2,300 people are there in the pool with scores between 473 and 480. Therefore, the Ontario's lower range at 473, higher range at 480. I hope I've been able to clarify this because so many people are confused. Why 473? Why 480? Why not 472? Why not 471? A lot of people are also holding it against Ontario. What do they have against 472s and 471s? They've held a draw at 458 to 462. What about everybody else? Well, that specific draw which happened 458 to 462 from Ontario, and a lot of you are holding it against them, that was a mistake from Ontario side, because what happened is Ontario, as they put a low cutoff, 1 point less than the express entry draw, in that particular draw they took the healthcare draw as the low cutoff, because on the same day they conducted many draws. They conducted the healthcare draw, the tech draw, the skilled occupations draw. Even for the tech draw, they inadvertently chose the high cutoff for the healthcare draw. It was a good thing for people who were in the express entry pool with the score of 458 to 462, because they would have otherwise not been invited. There was no way. So sometimes, God has a different way of doing things. The one who's there, up there, the power to be, they have their own plan. So you might think you have a plan, but those people have a better plan, and they choose to do what they choose to do. So I do not know how it happened, but Ontario chose the healthcare high cutoff, and therefore those 458 to 462s are invited. So Ontario doesn't have anything against 471s, 472s, 473s. It is just the way this game has been played. And 481, that now that IRCC has conducted a STEM category draw at 481, so whenever there is the next STEM category draw, and I'm hoping that the scores are lower for the next STEM category draw, because this time they didn't conduct one for 6 months, almost. The last one was on the 6th of July at 486 with a score of 481. So hopefully we should now see the next STEM category draw in. And whenever that draw happens, depending on how many invitations are being issued, depending on how many people are there in the STEM category. Now also keep in mind, STEM category has 24 knock codes, includes engineers and architects as well. Once these 24 knock codes will get invited, then whenever Ontario will conduct a following STEM category draw or tech category draw, you would see this. You can potentially see the scores in 450s, 460s. Again, it all depends on how many invitations, and also depends on how many people are there in the pool, right? So two things are extremely important. Next one is British Columbia. British Columbia, first of all, let me start by saying that British Columbia, in order to be eligible to get invited by BC, you need a job offer, except if you are an international postgraduate stream. On 12th of December, BC invited more than 192 candidates through 5 draws in BC PNP. 73 candidates did not target any specific occupation, and candidates from skilled worker international graduate streams needed a score of 116. The entry level and semi-skilled needed a score of 95, which also, to be very honest, is slightly on the higher side. But you see, this is what's happening. More and more people are becoming eligible. They're all entering the pool. They all have high scores because they're able to get the job offer. They're finding the employers, and therefore your competition is just increasing. So what do? Well, you then buckle up and put in some extra effort so that you can then further on get a better score yourself. Manitoba. On 14th of December, Manitoba also conducted 3 draws in their MPNP program. The province this time invited 160 candidates who had completed their post-secondary education in the province. So, each province is promoting people who are in their province. Because they already understand that these people who are in their province, they would like to continue staying there. They would like to offer, their contribution in terms of the growth of the province, versus people who just use the province to get their nomination and then leave. What that does is it makes it more difficult for people who follow, who want to genuinely live in that. If you are getting a PNP, humble request is you have expressed your intention to reside in the province. Please make a genuine, sincere effort that once you become a PR, once you come to the province, to actually live in that province, right? Because there are a lot of people who tend to move. That the fact that they face problems with the citizenship application, or them being questioned as to their intent of actually residing, that's a different question altogether. But when they move, when they leave the province and go away, they are creating problems for future applicants, because the province feels, of course, cheated, as I would say, and then they want those future candidates to show more and more documents, more and more proof about their intention, making it more difficult. So just genuine request, please. But yes, Manitoba held draw for 160 candidates who have post-secondary education in the province. The candidate also needed a minimum score of 774. And in this category, they had to indicate that their spouse or themselves, they have completed their post-secondary education in Manitoba. 774 is not a low score. It's quite a high score. They also invited 62 candidates from the international education stream. And finally, 61 candidates were invited from the skilled worker overseas category. And the minimum score was again 714. Now, these are all very, very high score. Again, indicative of the fact, one, because we're at the end of the year, so the quotas are all exhausted. They're all finally, in addition to that, it's all about the demand and supply. The demand is extremely high, supply is very limited. And therefore, if you had planned your journey in advance, like before you even came to Canada, you knew which province I was going to go, what I was going to do in that province, what are the programs this province offers, what are the pathways to get to that. So from day one, when you have come to Canada as an international student, instead of waiting of first getting your postgraduate work permit, then just finding survival jobs, and only when the last 3 months of expiry was left in your postgraduate work permit, then running helter-skelter after all these unscrupulous agents trying to figure out what I can do. You can't. You let go of the golden period that you had, the golden opportunity that you had to be in Canada. This is one of the biggest things that we are also facing with a lot of work permit holders, postgraduate work permit holders whose work permits are now expiring in Jan, Feb, March. They're all freaking out. What should I do? The number of consultations I do is phenomenal in the sense of people who want to figure out ways. This is the end of their line. Jan, Feb, March, their work permits are expiring. Now they want to figure out what can they do. There is nothing much, to be very honest. There are no hidden doors until and unless you find an employer, because most programs are employer driven. Alberta recently published the results of a draw for 19 express entry candidates who met the criteria of dedicated healthcare pathway, the Alberta job offer. So you needed a job offer, you had to be in healthcare. 19 people got invited because the CRS score was 300 or more, but only 19. So as you can see, provinces are becoming more and more and more restrictive as in the categories that they want to invite. By now, all of you already understand skilled trades is high in demand, healthcare high in demand, IT skill sets high in demand, because it's just that Canada has this aspiration, the big boy aspiration, that they want to compete with the US. So they want to compete with the Silicon Valley. And one way of trying to do that is by attracting more companies from the US to set up base in Canada. One way of doing that is trying to show those companies that, hey, we have this big pool of talent, IT talent in Canada, which you can tap into easily. Or if you set up base in Canada, you would be able to get more people the way you want them instead of the H-1B headache that you have with the US. That brings the reason why the IT demands are continuing to be in high demand. I don't think it's the job market that is very encouraging at this point of time, especially for the IT. Arima, Quebec has released the results of the December 7th draw, as you can see, quite late. For the Quebec Skilled Worker Program, the province estimates that the processing time for application will be up to 3 months. The province invited 1,187 people to apply for permanent residence in a general draw, meaning no occupations were specified, no human capital attributes were targeted, and they required only a score of 604. Now, I'm saying only, but 604 on Arima is a very, very good score to get. People who received an invitation, congratulations, you can now apply for your CSQ, and once you have that, you can apply for your PR. It's just that after CSQ, the PR is through the non-express entry route. You have the pathway, you have the route, you have the CSQ, you can also apply for the work permit, but this allows you to get through with the program. Please do follow us on Instagram if you're not following us. If you wish to make an appointment one-on-one, then this is the link. We can then discuss in detail what your queries are, what your concerns are, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Mind you, I do not have any hidden doorways. I do not know of any mystery pathways, mystery PNP programs. I don't. So this is a disclaimer. If you're going to be booking a consultation just to figure out if there was any hidden doorways, hidden pathways, there aren't any. If there was, I will be the first one to come out and talk to you about it here on my platform. So there aren't any, but you might have missed something without understanding what you're missing out on. That's what we've been able to figure out in a lot of consultations. So yes, by all means, if you wish to discuss something in person, something that you wish to talk about one-on-one, then by all means make an appointment. If you are interested in taking up any of our premium services, paid services, then please drop an email to support@askkubeir.com. Thank you so much for joining in, and I shall see you next time.